Today, we're going to dive deep and ask a pretty fundamental question. What really controls how we feel and act? Now, we all think we know the answer, but it might not be what you expect. We're going to go on a journey from the chemicals in our blood all the way to the very nature of consciousness itself. So, let's get into it.
I mean, you know that feeling, right? One day you're on top of the world, the next you're in a total slump, and you can't really figure out why. It's this super common human experience, this feeling that some powerful unseen forces are pulling our emotional strings. But what are they really?
For the longest time, the answer seemed pretty simple. The brain's the command center, obviously. But then you've got hormones, these incredibly powerful chemical messengers, and they can just hijack our mood, change our bodies, and totally influence our decisions. Sometimes it feels like they're not even listening to what our conscious brain wants. So who's actually running the show here?
To even begin to figure that out, we have to first get a real appreciation for the sheer power of these hidden controllers. They're like these invisible architects behind some of the biggest changes in our lives. Just think about the scale of what these hormones pull off. A tiny, tiny drop of one hormone, you can barely even measure it, can orchestrate the entire transformation from being a kid to becoming an adult. Another one literally dictates the most fundamental processes of motherhood. The whole cycle of life really depends on the delicate balance of these chemicals. Their power is it's undeniable, but it's almost always unseen.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. Scientists were trying to figure out, okay, what triggers these things? What tells them when to go? They looked at the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, but they couldn't find a direct control switch. It's like the usual explanations just weren't working. A huge piece of the puzzle was just missing.
And this gap in our understanding, well, it led science to this really profound, kind of humbling question, one that pushes the boundaries of everything we thought we knew about how we work.
So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If our brain, this supercomputer sitting in our skull, isn't the ultimate boss of these life-altering hormones, then what is? Who or what is pulling their strings? This is the mystery we're going to try to unravel.
The source material we're digging into today, it proposes a pretty radical idea. It suggests that to find the real answer, we have to look beyond just the physical stuff, beyond biology, to a much deeper level of who we are.
So the source calls this concept the Jiv Satta, which you can translate as the life force or life entity. The basic idea is that there's a core consciousness that exists separate from our physical body. Think of it as the hard drive that stores all our experiences, our deepest intentions, our habits. And, according to this viewpoint, this is the real command center, the one that's actually influencing our hormones. And this isn't just some passive background energy. No, this source says this life force is the wellspring of our willpower. It's where our biggest goals and our strongest resolutions come from. It's an active, powerful force that we can actually learn to work with, and maybe even direct.
Okay, so if this deeper consciousness is real, how do we even tap into it? How do we stop being tossed around by our moods and instead become the steady hand at the wheel? Well, the source gives us a really powerful metaphor for this.
Just look at this. Is your mind like dust? Light easily scattered, blown all over the place by every little thing? A criticism, some bad news, a small setback? Or is it like a rock? Heavy, solid, stable. Storms can come and go, the seasons can change, but the rock just remains. It feels the weather for sure, but it isn't defined by it. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It says that true strength, real dignity, isn't about how big you are or how much external power you have. It's about building that internal rock-like stability. It's that ability to stay centered and balanced no matter what kind of storm is raging outside. So how do we actually become the rock? The source lays out a pretty clear path. First, accept that life is full of change, just like the seasons. It's natural. Second, we got to practice staying level, not getting swept away by the winds or totally crushed by the losses. Third, when a crisis hits, we shift our mindset from oh no, despair, to okay, how do I adapt? And finally, we train our focus. We stop looking at what's missing and start feeling gratitude for what we have. Now, this might all sound like a nice philosophy, but you might be wondering, does it actually do anything in the real world? Well, the source gives us some pretty compelling case studies that suggest a focused, powerful will, that rock-like mindset, can profoundly shape the world around us. Let's see how this plays out. Take the Zuccarini family in Italy. The father had this incredibly strong, rock-like intention. His children were going to live lives of service and devotion. And this wasn't just a casual wish. It was the entire atmosphere of their home. And the result?
His kids became famous artists who dedicated their entire life's work to that exact mission.
Or what about Heinrich Tischbein and Gemini? His passion for art wasn't just a job, it was the core of who he was. And he infused his entire family with that same unwavering energy. They became so good and so prolific that history literally remembers them as a mine of artists. One person's singular focus created a whole artistic dynasty.
And one last one, Dr. Benjamin Couds. His dedication to medicine was just absolute. He didn't just tell his kids it was a good career, he created an entire environment soaked in that passion, and he never stopped encouraging them. And the result was incredible. Every single one of his kids became a doctor. In every one of these cases, a powerful, focused will literally shaped the destiny of an entire family.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy, and we've got these incredible real-world examples. But how does this all circle back to biology? Let's go back to the brain for a second. The work of a neurosurgeon, Dr. Wilder Penfield, gives us a stunning possible link. He identified this specific part of the brain, called the temporal cortex, which basically acts like a huge library for all of our memories.
And this is where it all clicks into place. Dr. Penfield discovered that by electrically stimulating the temporal cortex, he could make patients relive old memories like they were happening right now. So think about what that means. Electrical signals, our thoughts, our memories, our intentions, are activating these memory banks. That activation then sends a signal to our glands to release hormones, and those hormones create the physical feelings we call emotions: love, fear, anger, joy, the whole shebang. So what this shows us is a direct, physical pathway from our consciousness, our mindset, to the very hormones that govern our reality.
So it turns out, the ultimate controller isn't just the brain or just the hormones. It's the deeper consciousness that's directing them both. Your mind, your will, your focus. It isn't just watching the show. It's an active, creative force, and it has a direct line to your body's chemistry. So the only real question left is, what kind of world are you going to create with?
Okay, what if I told you that the single biggest thing holding you back in life was actually the key to unlocking everything you've ever wanted? Today, we are diving into some ancient wisdom that teaches us exactly how to master the one thing that so often ends up mastering us, our own mind. I mean, just picture that for a second. That image from our source text is, wow, it's so vivid. An untamed mind isn't just a little distracting, right? It's like you are literally being dragged by a runaway horse. You know that feeling? Being pulled along by worry or cravings, or just an endless mental to-do list, leaving you completely exhausted and bruised by your own thoughts. So let's just get real for a minute. Do you ever feel like your brain is pulling you in 100 different directions at once? Maybe you're completely overwhelmed by anxiety, or just constantly distracted by the next shiny thing? Well, according to our source, this isn't just you. This is a universal struggle, and it's the single biggest wall standing between us and the life we actually want to live. And that leads us to this really powerful concept from the text, the idea of the mind as a tyrant within. See, the source argues that an untrained mind doesn't just wander off. No, it actively takes over. It becomes this despotic ruler, and we become its helpless subjects. This internal chaos, this is exactly why we feel so stuck so much of the time. The source text even calls it a terrible ghost that just haunts and harasses us until we basically become its slave. It just drains all our energy with these constant cravings and anxieties, and that just paves the way for frustration and ultimately failure. But here's where things get really interesting. That same chaotic force, that same runaway horse, is actually holding the key to everything you want to achieve. The problem isn't the mind itself, not at all. The problem is our relationship with it. And to really help us flip this whole idea on its head, the source introduces this beautiful concept, man-gun-jusha, which translates to the mind's treasure chest. And honestly, this idea is a complete game changer. Suddenly, the mind isn't a battlefield you have to conquer. It's a vault, a treasure chest, that contains every single power we could ever need to succeed, from intellectual smarts to spiritual connection. And the text is just crystal clear on this point. It says that every single kind of success, we're talking financial, social, intellectual, you name it, it all flows directly from the power of the mind. Your ability to focus, to create, to just keep going. It all starts right up here. So it all boils down to this. You have a choice to make. Is your mind going to be the runaway horse dragging you wherever it wants to go? Or is it going to be a faithful, loyal servant that carries you directly toward your goals? And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the tyrant mind, rebellious, chaotic, totally destructive. And on the other, you have the servant mind we can actually build, obedient, stable, focused, and cooperative. It's simple, really. One works against you, the other works with you.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we make this transformation happen? Well, the source gives us a really practical toolkit. It breaks the whole process down into 3 core strategies for turning that tyrant into a servant.
So this toolkit has 3 main keys. First, you've got the 3 pillars of focus. That's learning to concentrate deeply, to get totally absorbed and immersed in whatever you're doing. Second, and this one might surprise you, is giving your mind the right fuel. As we're about to see, the text is adamant that what you eat directly shapes your mental state. And third is gradual practice. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You gotta be patient. And to really hammer home this point about diet, the source tells this fascinating little story. Scientists took this naturally calm and gentle rat, and they just changed its diet. They started feeding it spicy, what the text calls impure foods, like meat and alcohol. And what happened? Its entire personality changed. It became aggressive, agitated, and totally unruly. And here's the kicker. As soon as they put the rat back on a simple, pure diet, it went right back to its calm, gentle self. The takeaway is so direct and powerful. As the food, so the mind. What you're putting in your body is physically shaping who you are mentally. It's that simple. And when it comes to the actual practice of focusing, the advice is simple. Start small. Don't try to wrestle your mind into submission for hours on day 1. That's a recipe for disaster. Just start with 5 minutes. Maybe next week you build up to 20. The goal isn't to win some huge battle of wills. It's about gently and consistently building that mental muscle day by day. So, what's the ultimate payoff for all this work? What's at the end of the road? Well, it's way more than just being more productive or successful in the way we usually think about it. The source text makes this really important distinction about what the final reward truly is. It distinguishes between what it calls bigness, which is all the external stuff, right? Fame, wealth, status, and greatness. Greatness is internal. It's about your character, your wisdom, your integrity. It's about living a life that's driven by a deep sense of purpose, not just by ambition. So you see, true greatness, the real prize, rests on these 3 simple but incredibly profound pillars. Excellent thinking, having an ideal character, and just decent, kind behavior. This is the real treasure waiting for you inside that Manganjusha. This quote from the source just says it all, doesn't it? Mastering your mind isn't just a little self-improvement hack. It is about unlocking a level of potential that completely transforms every single aspect of your life. You literally gain access to the key that opens every single door. And so that's where we're left. The source is clear. This incredible power, this master key to all success, isn't something you have to go out and find. It's already in your hand. It's always been there. The only question left is, are you ready to turn it?